A 12-year-old black boy is suddenly dragged into court accused by a 70-year-old widow of a fallen police officer, the same woman he used to help every single day. But when Judge Frank Caprio hears what really happened, the entire courtroom freezes. Why did the elderly widow turn on the only boy who cared about her? And what shocking truth does this kid reveal in front of the judge? Stay with us, because the twist that unfolds next will leave you absolutely speechless. So don't move, watch this story till the very end. And before we begin, hit the like button, subscribe if you are new, and tell us in the comments which state or city are you watching this video from. 12-year-old Malik Johnson had always been the kind of kid who slowed down his bike when he saw someone struggling. On that cool Saturday morning in Providence, the leaves were rustling across Elmwood Avenue, and Malik was riding his blue BMX toward the corner store for a pack of sour gummies. As he passed by the old white Victorian house at the end of the block, he noticed an elderly woman standing on her porch, tapping anxiously on the metal frame of a broken television set. It was Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, 70 years old, short silver hair, wearing her late husband's oversized police jacket like a memory she refused to take off. Her husband, Officer Ronald Hayes, had passed away years earlier in the line of duty. The neighborhood respected her, but nobody really visited her. She lived quietly, alone, her house too big and too silent for one aging soul. Malik squeezed his brake. "Ma'am, do you need help?" he asked, dropping his kickstand. She looked up, startled at first, then softened. "Oh, Malik, right? You live 2 houses down. This old thing just died on me." Malik examined the TV. A loose power cable, full of dust, was hanging behind. He unplugged it, cleaned the prongs with a napkin he had in his pocket, replugged it tightly, and hit the switch. The screen flickered, buzzed, and came back to life with a warm glow. Eleanor gasped. "Good Lord, you fixed it." Malik grinned, proud but shy. Just needed a tighter connection. She opened the door. "Come in for a minute. Let me get you some cookies. You're a lifesaver." Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and old photo albums. Framed pictures of her late husband in uniform lined the walls. Malik sat at the kitchen table while she placed chocolate chip cookies and a glass of milk in front of him. "You remind me of my grandson," she said softly. "He moved away years ago. Haven has seen him in forever." Malik didn't know what to say, but he felt something tighten inside his chest. He kept coming back after that day, sometimes to help her lift groceries, sometimes to fix light bulbs, sometimes just to listen to her stories about Officer Hayes. How brave he was. How he loved Providence. How he died protecting the neighborhood. Over weeks, their bond grew an unspoken grandmother-grandson relationship. She would wave from the window whenever he rode past, and he would smile every time he saw her porch light on. But one cold afternoon, something felt off. Malik knocked on her door, carrying a small bag of oranges he bought with his allowance. She opened it only halfway, her eyes swollen, her hands trembling. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Malik asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she stared at him as if she was frightened of him, something he had never seen before. Behind her, a tall police officer stepped into view. His badge glinted. His posture was stiff. "Is this the boy?" he asked. Eleanor nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes. Before Malik could understand what was happening, the officer grabbed his arm. "Malik Johnson, you need to come with us." Malik froze. "What? Why? I didn't do anything." Neighbors peeked through curtains. Kids stopped playing basketball on the sidewalk. Malik's mother came running out of their apartment, panic in her voice. "What is happening? Why are you taking my son?" The officer didn't explain. "Ma'am, the court will address everything." Eleanor stood on the porch, shaking, unable to meet Malik's eyes. Malik felt betrayed, confused, terrified. Why would she bring a cop to his house? What had he done wrong? He was placed in the back of the patrol car, his hands shaking uncontrollably. And as the car pulled away, he caught one last glimpse of Eleanor, hand on her chest, crying silently. Something about this wasn't right. Something was missing. Something had been twisted. And all of it was about to be revealed in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. The police cruiser rolled through downtown Providence as Malik sat in the back seat, his small hands trembling on his lap. He had never been in trouble before. His heart hammered in his chest, each beat louder than the last. The officer driving didn't say a word, and the silence felt heavier than the sirens that weren't turned on. They arrived at the precinct, where a cold metal bench and a buzzing fluorescent light greeted him. Officer Ramirez, the one who picked him up, filled out paperwork while keeping Malik in his peripheral vision. Can I call my mom?" Malik finally asked, voice cracking. "She's already on her way," Ramirez responded without looking up. Across the room, officers glanced at him, puzzled. A 12-year-old boy being brought in like this wasn't normal. Yet nobody questioned the order, not when the complainant was a widow of a fallen officer. After what felt like hours, Malik's mother, Denise Johnson, rushed in. She knelt beside him immediately, arms wrapping around his shoulders. "Baby, are you okay? Did they hurt you? What is going on?" Malik clung to her. "Mama, I didn't do anything. I swear." Denise lifted her furious eyes toward Officer Ramirez. "Someone better explain why my son was dragged out of my house like a criminal." Ramirez sighed. "Judge Caprio will handle the case. The complainant insists there is evidence." "Evidence of what?" she snapped. The officer only shook his head. "You will all hear it in court." The next morning, the Providence Municipal Court buzzed with murmurs. The courtroom was full neighbors, reporters, even officers who knew Malik's father from community events. Everyone was confused, concerned, curious. Judge Frank Caprio took his seat, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the docket. His calm, fatherly demeanor filled the room with a quiet seriousness. "Case of Mrs. Eleanor Hayes versus Malik Johnson," the bailiff announced. The crowd gasped. Malik walked in with his mother. He wore a clean button-up shirt, but nothing could hide the fear in his wide eyes. Denise squeezed his shoulder protectively. Across the aisle sat Eleanor Hayes, but she wasn't the warm, cookie-baking grandmother figure anymore. Her hands were clasped tightly, her shoulders rigid, her face pale. She refused to look at Malik. Judge Caprio observed the scene, eyebrows narrowing slightly. "Mrs. Hayes, this is a serious matter. You're accusing this young man of vandalism and property intrusion?" Whispers shot through the courtroom. Malik's mouth dropped. "I what?" Denise stood immediately. "Your Honor, this has to be a mistake." Caprio raised a gentle hand. "Mrs. Johnson, you will have your turn. Mrs. Hayes, please explain." Eleanor's voice shook. "Your Honor, I found him inside my house last week when I came home from the pharmacy. My living room drawers were open. My husband's medals were moved. I panicked. I didn't know what he was doing there." Malik's face twisted in confusion and pain. "Ma'am, I never..." Caprio gestured for calm. Mrs. Hayes, did you see him touch anything? Her breath trembled. The front door was open, and he was standing in my living room. I assumed you assumed? Denise snapped. But before the tension could break, Officer Ramirez stepped forward. We also have a thumbprint on the metal casing, Your Honor. Malik felt his stomach plunge. His thumbprint, of course, it would be there. He had helped dust those metals last week when she told him she couldn't reach the high shelf. Judge Caprio leaned back, studying the trembling boy in front of him, then the fragile widow sitting stiffly across the room. Mrs. Hayes, he said gently, why didn't you speak with the boy first? You two seemed close. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Tears welled. Because I didn't know anymore who to trust. Something deeper was hiding beneath her words. Something she wasn't saying. Malik couldn't hold it in. Ma, I never stole anything. I never even opened those drawers. I only helped you because you were alone. His voice cracked, and a tear slid down his cheek. The courtroom fell utterly silent. Judge Caprio's expression softened for a moment. We will take a short recess. The gavel tapped, but Malik noticed something as Eleanor stood, a nervous tremble, a guilty hesitation, her eyes shifting away, not from fear, but from shame. Something wasn't adding up. And when court resumed, everything would change. When the recess ended, the atmosphere inside the courtroom had changed. People were whispering, exchanging worried looks. Judge Caprio returned to the bench with a thoughtful expression, tapping his pen lightly as he prepared to continue. Mrs. Hayes, he said calmly, before we proceed, I want to make sure you fully understand the seriousness of your accusation. A criminal charge, especially against a child, is not something we take lightly in this courtroom. Eleanor swallowed hard. Her shoulders trembled. Malik watched her with wide, confused eyes, still unable to understand why the woman who once baked him cookies was now standing against him. Officer Ramirez stepped forward with a folder. Your Honor, the thumbprint report is here. Judge Caprio skimmed it, a print on a metal casing. He looked over his glasses. Mrs. Hayes, did you ever ask the boy to help clean or handle your husband's metals? She froze. The room grew still. Malik whispered, Tell him, Ma, and tell him I helped you clean. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Her hands trembled, clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. But she didn't answer. Caprio leaned forward. Mrs. Hayes? Her silence was louder than any confession. Denise exhaled sharply. Your Honor, this is wrong. My son has been helping this woman for months. He fixed her TV, carried her groceries. He practically adopted her as his own grandmother. Malik tugged his mother's sleeve, hurt but determined. Mama let me speak. Judge Caprio nodded. Go ahead, son. Malik stepped forward, voice thin but steady. I never went into her house without her saying it was okay. I never touched anything except what she asked me to help with. I only wanted her to not be lonely. The courtroom softened. Even the bailiff blinked hard, fighting emotion. Eleanor finally lifted her head, her eyes glistening. Mrs. Hayes, Caprio said gently, why didn't you tell me what truly happened that day? What made you so afraid that you called the police on a 12-year-old who cared about you? Her breath shook. I came home and found the door unlocked. Caprio nodded. Did you leave it unlocked before leaving? I don't remember, she whispered. And the drawers? He asked. I thought they were rummaged through. But I'm old, Judge. Sometimes I forget what I last touched. The room went silent again. Then her face crumpled. "There have been break-ins in my neighborhood lately," she finally admitted. "And I've been hearing footsteps at night, seeing shadows. I don't sleep much anymore. I feel like the world is closing in on me." She clutched her chest. "When I saw Malik inside, I didn't think. I panicked. I thought someone had followed me or was still inside." Her voice broke. "And I blamed the wrong person." Malik stared at her, stunned, sadness flooding his small face. "But that isn't the whole truth," Caprio said quietly. "There's something else. You are not telling me why you suddenly feared the boy you trusted." The courtroom leaned in. Eleanor hesitated, then whispered, "Because the night before someone knocked on my door. A man demanding to know where my husband kept some old case files. Files from 30 years ago." A collective murmur rippled through the room. "My husband was a police officer," she continued shakily. "He used to work dangerous cases. Before he died, he told me if anything ever happened, some people might come looking." Denise frowned. "So you thought my son—" "I didn't know," Eleanor cried. "I saw Malik on my porch the next morning, and my mind had twisted things. I thought maybe that man had sent him." I thought her voice dissolved into tears. I was scared. So scared. Malik's heart broke, not from anger, but from sympathy. Judge Caprio exhaled slowly. Things were beginning to make sense, but the situation had suddenly become much more complicated. "Mrs. Hayes," he said softly, "did you tell anyone about this man before today?" "No, I didn't want people thinking I was losing my mind." Caprio turned to Officer Ramirez. "We clearly have more than a simple property complaint here." Ramirez nodded. "Your Honor, this might be connected to an old cold case. We've been getting reports of someone posing as a detective, interrogating elderly families of retired officers." The courtroom buzzed. Malik whispered to his mother, "Mama, maybe she wasn't trying to hurt me." Denise squeezed his hand. "I know, baby." Judge Caprio tapped his pen, thinking deeply. Then he looked directly at Eleanor. "Mrs. Hayes, do you believe this boy meant you any harm?" "No," she said through tears. "He's the only person who made me feel safe since my husband died." The weight lifted slightly from Malik's chest, but Caprio wasn't finished. "Officer Ramirez," he said, "I want a full investigation into the man who approached Mrs. Hayes. And until we understand the threat, both she and this young man may be in danger." Malik froze. Danger? Why would anyone come after him? Judge Caprio looked at both of them with grave concern. "This case," he said slowly, "is no longer just about a misunderstanding. Something far bigger is going on here, and we need to find out what before it is too late." The courtroom held its breath, because whatever was coming next would shake both families to the core. When court resumed the next morning, the atmosphere inside Judge Caprio's courtroom was nothing like the day before. Security had been tightened. 2 additional officers stood at the back, and even the bailiff's posture was sharper, more alert. Something unseen was pressing down on the room, something dangerous. Malik sat beside his mother, his small legs barely touching the floor. He kept glancing toward the entrance, nervous that the mysterious man Eleanor spoke about might suddenly appear. Beside the prosecution table sat Eleanor Hayes, her silver hair neatly combed, but her hands trembling uncontrollably. She hadn't slept. That much was obvious. Judge Caprio entered and looked at everyone with a grave expression. "Before we continue with this case," he announced, "Officer Ramirez has brought new information to the court." Ramirez stepped forward, placing a thick folder on the judge's desk. Your Honor, last night we received a report from another elderly widow. A man posing as a detective forced his way into her house, asking questions about her husband's old police work. The description matches exactly what Mrs. Hayes reported. The courtroom gasped. Ramirez continued. We also checked the Hayes residence. There were signs someone had tampered with the locks. Whoever this man is, he's targeting families of deceased officers from cases involving organized crime from the 1990s. Caprio's eyes sharpened. Do we have reason to believe this individual may have targeted Mrs. Hayes because of something Officer Hayes handled decades ago? Yes, Your Honor, Ramirez replied. There's a possibility he's looking for something important, something Hayes might be kept secret. Eleanor flinched, clutching her purse tightly. Denise whispered to her son, Baby, don't be scared. No one will hurt you. But Malik wasn't afraid for himself. He kept looking at Eleanor, whose eyes were filled with something deeper than fear-guilt. Judge Caprio turned to her. Mrs. Hayes, yesterday you said you didn't want people to think you were losing your mind. But today, something tells me you're still hiding something. And if you don't tell the full truth, not only are you in danger, this boy, who has shown nothing but kindness towards you, might be in danger too. Her lip quivered. Judge, if I say it out loud, it might bring back everything my husband tried to protect me from. Caprio leaned forward, voice gentle but firm. Mrs. Hayes, the court cannot protect you from what it doesn't know. Please tell us. Eleanor closed her eyes, took a shaky breath, and began. Before Ronald died, she whispered, he told me he had evidence, real evidence, against a group of men involved in human trafficking and money laundering in Providence back in the 90s. He never turned it in. He said he feared corruption inside the force at the time and didn't know who he could trust. The room went dead silent. When he passed, she continued. He told me to hide the evidence in a place only he and someone like him could find. He said, if anyone knocks one day asking about the files, trust no one. Ramirez leaned forward. Mrs. Hayes, where did you hide the evidence? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Inside the frame of his police medals. A shock rippled across the courtroom. Malik's eyes widened. He had cleaned that metal frame several times. He had touched history without even knowing it. Caprio asked, when you found Malik in your living room that day, was he near the metal frame? Yes, she whispered. He was dusting it just like he always did for me. But my mind, my fear mixed everything up. I thought he might be connected to the man who came the night before. I thought maybe they tricked him or used him. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I blamed a child, an innocent child, because I was terrified. Malik's voice broke softly. Ma, you should be told me. I would be helped you. Eleanor covered her mouth as she sobbed. But before Caprio could respond, the courtroom door opened suddenly. Another officer hurried inside and whispered something into Ramirez's ear. Ramirez's eyes widened. He quickly stepped forward. Your Honor, we just received a critical update. That same man who has been targeting widows, he was spotted near the Johnson residence last night. Denise shot up from her seat. What? Near our house? My son. Ramirez nodded grimly. He asked a neighbor which apartment belonged to the little boy who visits the widow. Malik felt his stomach drop. Judge Caprio's steady voice cut through the panic. Officer Ramirez, I want protection placed on both the Hayes house and the Johnson residence immediately. No further delays. Ramirez nodded, but Eleanor's trembling voice rose again, this time filled with urgency. "Judge, you don't understand." She pointed at Malik with shaky hands. "If that man knows Malik was near the metals, then he thinks Malik saw something. He thinks Malik knows where the evidence is." Malik felt his heart stop. Caprio turned cold and serious. "Mrs. Hayes, do you still have the evidence in your home?" She shook her head. "No, I moved it, last night, after court." She clutched her purse tighter. "I have it with me right here." A stunned silence fell. Then Caprio spoke, voice low and controlled. "Mrs. Hayes, you brought critical evidence of a decades-old criminal conspiracy into my courtroom in your purse?" She nodded. Malik stared at her. Everything suddenly felt larger, darker, dangerous. And Judge Caprio stood, slowly removing his glasses. "This courtroom," he said firmly, "is now the center of something far more serious than a misunderstanding between a boy and a widow. Lives are at risk. Decisions made today could determine whether justice finally sees daylight after decades of secrecy." He paused, looking at Malik. "And this boy may be the key to uncovering it." The entire courtroom braced, because whatever came next was going to be explosive. The courtroom felt like it was breathing tight, heavy, pulsing with danger. Every eye was fixed on Eleanor Hayes as she clutched her purse like it was her last lifeline. Judge Caprio stared at her with a mix of disbelief and concern. "Mrs. Hayes," he said quietly, "please step forward." Her steps were slow, shaky. The bailiff moved instinctively, staying close. Even Malik felt his palms sweat as he watched the frail widow approach the bench. When she reached the front, Eleanor carefully lowered her purse and opened the zipper. Her hands trembled violently. The courtroom leaned in. From the purse, she pulled out a small, velvet-lined wooden box, the same metal frame Malik had polished weeks ago. But now it looked heavier, older, almost haunted. She placed it gently on the bench. "This is what he's after," Eleanor whispered. Judge Caprio motioned for Officer Ramirez to inspect it. Ramirez lifted the metals, feeling along the back until his fingers found a nearly invisible latch. When it clicked open, the room collectively held its breath. Inside the hollowed frame lay a stack of yellowed documents, old floppy disks, and a small cassette tape labeled in faded pen. "Case 472, Hayes, do not destroy." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Ramirez's face drained of color. "Your Honor, these are internal police documents. Some of these names, these are politicians, high-profile businessmen, and former officers. This is huge." Judge Caprio tapped the bench twice. "Order." The murmurs died instantly. Caprio looked at Eleanor. "Mrs. Hayes, why didn't you turn these in sooner?" "Because Ronald told me not to," she whispered. "He said there were people inside the department, people with power who would destroy anyone who tried. He told me to wait until I met someone I believed could do the right thing." Her watery eyes drifted toward Malik. "And I met that person in a 12-year-old boy who still believes the world can be kind." Malik froze. His mother covered her mouth, tears running down her cheeks. But before anyone could speak further, the courtroom doors burst open. A man rushed inside, tall, broad, wearing a cheap brown jacket and a fake badge clipped to his belt. His face was sharp, his eyes hungry. The same man who had threatened Eleanor. Two officers tried to intercept him, but he shoved them aside violently. "Enough!" he barked. "Hand it over. Right now. The files belong to us." Gasps filled the room. Malik grabbed his mother's arm as Denise immediately shielded him. Judge Caprio stood. "Sir, this is a courtroom. If you take one more step, you will be." But the man didn't care. He lunged toward the bench. At that moment, the bailiff tackled him to the ground. Officers swarmed, forcing his hands behind his back. The man thrashed wildly, screaming, "You think this ends here? You think those names will ever see daylight? You are all dead, every last one of you." The threat chilled the room to the bone, but Ramirez stepped forward, fury burning in his voice. "Shut up. You are done. We've got everything we need." They dragged the man out, still shouting, still threatening. When the door slammed shut behind him, the room erupted into shaken relief. Judge Caprio took a long breath, sitting back down, the weight of the moment visible in his eyes. "Mrs. Hayes," he said softly, "you may have saved lives today." She shook her head. "No." Judge Malik did. All eyes turned to the boy. Malik felt his cheeks grow warm. "I didn't do anything," he whispered. But Caprio pressed a hand over his heart. "Son, you showed kindness when you didn't have to. Compassion in a world that desperately needs it. And if you hadn't earned Mrs. Hayes' trust, those files may never have resurfaced." Ramirez nodded. He may have helped solve a decades-old conspiracy. Denise put her arm around her son, tears in her eyes. "That's my boy." Eleanor approached Malik slowly. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice quivering. "I let fear turn you into a suspect. I should have trusted you. You were the closest thing I had to family." Malik swallowed hard. "I was never mad at you, Ma, I am. I just wanted you to be safe." She hugged him tight, trembling, grandmotherly. The entire courtroom softened at the sight. Judge Caprio cleared his throat emotionally. "In light of the truth uncovered today, I am dismissing all charges against Malik Johnson. Furthermore, the city owes this child and his mother an apology for the distress caused." The gavel echoed loudly, but Caprio wasn't finished. "Officer Ramirez, I want a dedicated detail on both Mrs. Hayes and the Johnson family until this investigation is fully closed." "Yes, Your Honor." Caprio smiled warmly at Malik. "Young man, if you ever decide to run for mayor of Providence someday, let me know. I'll be the first to vote for you." The courtroom laughed gently in emotional release after so much tension. Malik grinned shyly. As they walked out of the courtroom together, Malik, his mother, Eleanor Hayes, protected by officers, the morning sun spilled across the courthouse steps. For the first time in years, Eleanor didn't feel alone. For the first time in his life, Malik felt like he'd done something bigger than himself. And for the first time in Providence, in a long, long time, justice finally felt real. The boy who stopped to fix a broken TV had unknowingly fixed something much larger, a broken silence, a buried truth, and a lonely heart. Today's courtroom story reminds us of something powerful. Sometimes a simple act of kindness can change an entire life, or even uncover a truth that's been buried for decades. A 12-year-old boy's compassion, courage, and loyalty helped bring justice back into the light. And in a world that often feels cold, his heart became the reason someone finally felt safe again. If this story moved you, give the video a like. And if you want more emotional, real-life courtroom stories like this one, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Tell us in the comments, which state in America are you watching from? Sometimes The smallest kindness can break the biggest silence. Remember that and keep spreading good. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.